Good morning, everybody. This is Mike Berger again with NC Planning. Thank you for joining us. We're bringing you another daily council update. As always, if you're following us on YouTube, please be sure to give us a like and a subscribe as it helps out the channel. Continuing in our sort of series of talking with other professionals and partners out there in the space, in the business practice area, I'm pleased to have with us today Mr. Brent Cooley with Venture Dental Group. Brent works primarily with dentists and dental practices in dental transitions and brokerage for practices. And as you may know, our practice at NC Planning, we work on dental acquisitions and sales, a number of them every year. So I'm glad to have Brent with us today. Good morning, Brent. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Appreciate the invite.
Of course. Well, listen, man, I really do appreciate you stopping by. For our viewers out there, particularly as we kind of are reopening post-COVID-19, maybe you can share with us a little bit about Venture Dental Group, what you do, and what you're seeing in the marketplace.
Sure. So again, Brent Cooley, Venture Dental Group. I started this company about 7 years ago, and I saw a big need for someone, doing some quality work, representing buyers and sellers in the dental space, and especially in North Carolina. So that's kind of where my focus has been. And we represent typically a buyer or a seller. We don't do dual representation. However, we do some representations as a kind of a neutral third party on internal transitions. The market has been quite fantastic over the last 5 to 7 years, especially in the Raleigh, Charlotte, bigger markets in North Carolina. And it's continued even up into this COVID situation, which obviously occurred over the last few months. So the practice valuations are we're at the peak, similar to the stock market and all that good stuff a few months ago. And now there's a bunch of uncertainty as far as what's going to happen as practices start to open up like they're doing now. Over the last month or so, things are starting to open up more regularly. But, there's feedback I'm getting from potential sellers and buyers, and, expressing their uncertainty and concerns. And that's kind of where things are right now, between the lenders, between, again, the buyers and the sellers. There's a lot of just uncertainty. This is a territory that none of us have ever seen before, so it's been an interesting ordeal to go through. But I do see it bouncing back. So, but going back on what's happened, what I'm seeing as things are starting to open, banks are having some uncertainty on what to kind of look for as far as parameters are concerned. So what I'm hearing most often is that they're wanting to see 30 to 60 days of practice performance, so production collection reports, profit and loss statements, post-opening full time. Obviously during that 2 months or so of kind of that everything closing down period, they're open for emergencies, but not full procedures and so forth. So now as things are progressively ramping up, the banks are wanting to see 30 to 60 days to make sure that the patients are coming back, that the production's coming back closer to normal. And what I'm hearing most often is that they're wanting to see between 75 to 85% of what the practice was previously collecting pre-COVID. And as that progresses month by month, hopefully that trend goes upward. And if they see those kind of numbers, it's looking like the banks are going to be fine funding these acquisitions. We have 3 practices currently under contract, one of which actually fell through recently due to this, because of the uncertainty by both parties. So that will probably be reactivated in a few months. But just to, everyone's wanting to see kind of how things shake out. The other 2 practices were supposed to close in May, and now it's looking more like end of July, early August. It's kind of what you're seeing for most of these practice acquisitions that were under contract. So it's, the biggest uncertainty I'm seeing from a buyer's perspective is kind of what they should expect to pay once new practices come on the market, right? So before, in this area, for a solid practice, you're seeing anywhere between 80 and 90% of collections with 100% financing by the banks. That's been no problem. Now, after this stuff's been going on, it's looking more towards 80%, and the banks are potentially wanting to have some sort of owner carryback, which means owner financing. So they may say, hey, the practice is doing $1 million. It's worth, appraise it for 80% or $800,000. As long as the seller will provide 90% financing, the seller's got to hold note for the remaining 10%. That's kind of what we're seeing now, is more of an earnout. Again, because the banks are needing to spread that risk and share that risk with the sellers just because of the uncertainty. So that's kind of what I'm seeing from buyers too. They're wanting to protect themselves as well, because again, no, this is new territory for everybody, and everyone wants to make sure that things rebound accordingly. So it's kind of where we are currently.
Yeah, I share those sentiments with you. We're seeing similar requests or questions, right, from prospective purchasers, prospective sellers. A couple of things I've observed there. Number one, I think in light of just what has occurred with COVID-19 and the headache, if you will, of having to lay off staff, rehire staff, et cetera. I think there's an uptick in folks who are at least thinking about, what does it look like to sell the practice, and how do we start a timeline horizon or things. But then, on the other side, for folks who are looking to buy, the question we're feeling probably most often is, how's this going to impact prices of practices? And right now, I think you did a great job summing up that there's some shifting going on, and we're not really quite certain where it's landed from the financing perspective with commercial lenders, but that I think we can expect some changes in the structure of LOIs, right? Letters of intent, and how a deal may be put together. The purchase price may have that, as you put, seller holdback or earnout component or seller financed piece. Whereas we saw less of those over the last few years, I think. But I think a little bit of time will tell. To that first point that I was making, Brent, for somebody that is starting to contemplate, hey, maybe I've had enough of this, right? This has been a headache. I've done this a long time. What do you think you would tell them as a first step if you're considering maybe selling your dental practice?
So as a first step, I would definitely, for those that have been on the fence, I would probably encourage them to seriously think about selling now, because I've gotten a number of calls over the last several weeks for sellers that are kind of burnout and having to deal with the furloughing of employees and having to deal with the potential PPP loans and repayments and all that good stuff. I foresee an influx of practices hitting the market, right? So that could, obviously, simple economics, increase supply versus lower the demand potentially, as it correlates to previous, where there was very, very little supply, high demand, so the prices were going up. I see the market softening a little bit, and the values of practices and what people are willing to pay for, buyers are willing to pay for the practices, potentially going down. There's no guarantees on that, like anything for that matter. So for a first step, I would say feel free to give someone like myself a call, or you, Michael, a call, to kind of see what kind of options are out there. There's a number of different types of buyers that we work with, that some are willing to pay a premium for these practices, regardless of what's going on now, because they know that the history of the practice, kind of speaks for itself. So practices that have a long, great history, of a solid patient base, great practice profile, great staff, and all that good stuff, they're still very, very desirable. And whether you're looking for an individual buyer, someone that's a good fit for that practice, just to kind of carry on that legacy, or if you're wanting to stick around and just tired of the management, we work with a number of DSOs and smaller group practices that do a great job of taking care of the practice and carrying on that legacy while allowing you to stick around. So, feel free to give me a call or shoot me an email. Everything is extremely confidential, so there's no worries there. And it's, I would encourage you to kind of start that process, just to, get the dialogue going, to kind of see what your options are, see if now's a good time, or if your timeline is 2 to 3 years or 5 years down the road. Just plan for the different scenarios that may come. And now with North Carolina allowing the DSOs, that's changing the dynamic of these structures of the practices as well. So they're paying more of a premium or higher price for these practices, but they're wanting to tie that to practice performance and for the doctor and staff, being retained and so forth. So yeah, first step is to get that dialogue started as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We're big proponents at NC Planning about take your time, evaluate your options, surround yourself with a team of advisors, develop a plan, and then implement the plan. And
Exactly.
I tell dental clients the same thing. Really, it fits their business model just as well as any other, and that is, as you point out, Brent, know your options, know what your practice is worth. Is there going to be an opportunity for internal succession? Do you look for external succession, potentially brokerage? And then I think you hit the nail right on the head. That key component that we see more and more is that, dentists, in my opinion, they really care about their patients and their patient base for the most part, right? Of the ones that I talk to. And a lot of transitioning in selling a practice, it comes down for the dentist of making sure there's a good steward there of their patients that they've developed over time. And I think with this, concept of transition assistance, where that dentist can stay on with a practice and work as an associate or as an independent contractor post-closing, post-sale of the practice to the new owner for some period of time as negotiated between the parties, I think it can make a really nice fit, smooth transition, allowing that dentist to continue working, number one, but number two, to really be there and see with their own eyes that, hey, this is going to be a really good baton pass. Our patients are going to be well taken care of.
Yeah, I agree. And one thing to touch on that, prior to all of this COVID situation going on, when I would see an individual buyer acquire a practice, I would always recommend a very small transition period, because it's a tough transition to begin with. And when both doctors are there, new doctors typically wanting to make some changes, old doctor doesn't want to make those changes, so there can be some butting of heads. So quicker transition is usually preferable. However, after this, you're going to probably see longer transition periods between the buyer and the seller, from the standpoint of, with the uncertainty and with everything ramping back up, that new doctor is going to need the previous doctor to stick around just to preserve that goodwill and transfer that goodwill over the first few months, I would say, post sale, because that's going to be crucial. That transition period is going to be absolutely crucial to maintain that goodwill and that patient base, following the transition of the sale.
Absolutely. Brent, great stuff. Thank you for coming on and giving us some insight today. As folks watch these videos, we get some follow-up questions often. If it's all right with you, I'd like to go ahead and share a screen with your contact information, just so folks know where to find you.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. And I'll go ahead and give you my personal information. The stuff that you'll be sharing on the website is our main website, which is venturedentalgroup.com, which will show you that. You can fill out a contact form. It goes directly to me. And my personal email address is bcooley, so B as in boy, Cooley, COOLEY, at venturedentalgroup.com. And my phone number, my cell phone, is 919-337-7196. Again, 919-337-7196. So if you have any questions, obviously no obligation. I just want to make sure that you guys are on the right track, and feel free to give me a call anytime to kind of explore your options and see what kind of scenarios could be a good fit for you. So I appreciate you having me, Mike.
Of course, Brent, always good to see you. I know we're still sort of social distancing, but hopefully we'll be able to grab lunch sometime soon. Until then, thanks again for sharing your insight and your wisdom. Really appreciate the time. Stay safe, and we'll talk with you again soon.
Sounds great. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, everyone.